Hello, this is Scott Fable with Bevilacqua Knight. Thank you all for attending the webinar today. What I'd like to do today is do a quick run-through of what's important in an Energy Pro model for the Energy Upgrade California program, and then go to your questions. So you can ask specific questions about how certain things work in Energy Pro, what's required, what's not, in terms of completing an Energy Pro model for the Energy Upgrade California program. And also, if you have any specific features of a home that you aren't sure how you're supposed to model in Energy Pro, you can pose those in the questions box as well, and we will cover that as part of the session today. What you're looking at is a screenshot of an Energy Pro model. This is a copy of one of the, something very similar to one of the templates that is currently available on the CVPCA website. So let me start with that, just for those of you that may be getting into the program new. I won't spend a lot of time on this. It's been covered in other webinars. But if you are coming into the program somewhat new, there's a lot of resources available to you at the CVPCA's website for the Energy Upgrade California Utility Rebate Program. You can get there by typing in cvpcapublicutilities.org and bookmarking it. Or if you forget that, or trying to get to it and you can't remember, you can always go to CVPCA's homepage and then click on Energy Upgrade California. It'll take you right to this page. As you can see, there is a Energy Pro Energy Modeling Support tab, and there's three options: Tips, the webinar, and FAQ. The webinar is where we'll have the webinar posted. Energy Pro Tips, I'm just going to show you that right here. Click on that. And it breaks down the process of creating a model into steps, each of those linked to a different part on the page. And it just takes you through the approach that you can take to get a model built. You'll notice that as we go down, there are some, under part one, there's some sample files that we've created. I have one of them open right now. You can download them all as a compressed file, a zip file, with the link on that page. And that is an opportunity for you to, on your own, or you can, if you want, while you're looking at this webinar, even bring those up on your own machine and follow along if you like. Each of those represents one of these categories listed here: a single-story or a two-story house built depending on vintage. These were models that let you look at a completely filled-out Energy Pro model, but also you can use that for a starting point to help you build models for homes that are actually being assessed within the program. Sometimes it's contractors have found it's helpful to create or have on record some models that represent something close to what you've assessed. That way, when you go to actually build the model for the real house, you're just changing a few of the parameters rather than starting from scratch. I won't go through all the steps here. I've just wanted to point out that this is available. In addition to the tips, there are an FAQ question. The webinars for this and past webinars will be here. And then also, of course, there's the reporting and information about whichever territory you're operating in. All of that is can be found at the CVPCA website. Also, one more thing, if you are new to the program, the software that we're talking about today is Energy Pro. It's available through a company called EnergySoft, energysoft.com. Their website has a link to Energy Pro, so you click on that. We're looking at Energy Pro for the residential market. So you can download basically the trial version of Energy Pro for free. By clicking on this link, what will happen is once you install it, you'll be able to run the program, but you will not be able to run any calculations until you buy a module. Once you buy a module, then you're paying to unlock the calculation feature, and that'll let you generate reports and energy savings calculations. To purchase a module, you can contact EnergySoft. There's several places on the website you can get a hold of them. You can call them or send an email to request. But to find out which modules you're looking for, today we're going to be talking about contractors that are doing their own modeling. You will be using the Residential Performance Module, RM4, as part of the Energy Upgrade California program. And there's one exception to that, but generally that's what you would purchase in order to be able to run your simulations. Notice that there's a price for this module of $300, but there's also base price for the software itself of $200, so that would total up to $500 if you haven't purchased it already. We often get the question, what if I'm using a different module in Energy Pro, or which module do I need? If you are using or performing HERS 2 ratings, then you are most likely going through CalCerts to get that. They're the HERS 2 rater for California, get the provider at the moment. And so you would be using CalRate Pro. And you can continue to use CalRate Pro in the Energy Upgrade California program as long as you're able to report out the values that the programs need, which are the site kilowatt hours, therms, and average kW. If you can get to those numbers in the reports provided to you by CalRate Pro, then that's fine, but you have to be able to get to those pieces of information. I can't say definitively whether that's available right now, because I know that that is something that CalCerts is working on right now with the Energy Commission, is to update that to make it easier to use with the Energy Upgrade California program. I don't know at the moment of this webinar whether that's already been enacted or it's in progress. If you are unsure, compare with the jobs reporting template for the information we're looking for with the reports you get in your module to see if you already have one of these modules, to see if it's providing the information you need. Also, if you have questions for the program, you're always welcome to send an email to contractors@thecvpca.org. That information, just so you know, is available. Notice it's right there, contractors@thecvpca.org is a place to contact us. Lastly, the piece of backup information that you would need to know to be able to properly build your model is you need a jobs reporting template. If you're in the Pacific Gas and Electric territory, you'll get the one for the PG&E territory. That's also available on PG&E's website by going to the section that's appropriate to the territory you're operating in, and you just download the jobs template. It'll look like this when you open it. There's an instructions tab. This is the first tab that you'll see. That tab is giving you instructions not just how to fill out this worksheet, but also the steps that you must follow in order to report the job to the utility program so that you can start the process of qualifying for that rebate. I will run through that in a moment, but I just wanted to point out that this is the companion piece to creating an Energy Pro model. There's a tab for putting in pre-retrofit information, post-retrofit information for an advanced path. And something that you may not be aware of, there is an advanced Energy Pro checklist, and that one I'll just show it to you. This presents the same information you've already entered on the other tabs in the order that you'll need it in order to fill out an Energy Pro model. So as long as you're filling in the other tabs appropriately, then you can come right over to here to build an Energy Pro, to reference the Energy Pro fields that are needed. Let's get over to the model itself. What I wanted to point out to you are which parts of the model are the relevant parts of the model. And so I'm using, again, one of those example files that's already built out just to show you how this is done. You have two options when you're creating a model for a house that you haven't modeled before. There is a wizard available in Energy Pro, which will allow you to, it's the residential building wizard. It's this button right here, second from the left on the toolbar. And once you click on that, it'll ask you some features about the home. That's one way to go about it. Another way is to open one of these pre-existing files and then just modify the pieces so that it's already built out and you don't have to go back and figure out what's missing after you did the wizard, because unfortunately the wizard doesn't ask you for every detail about the house. So you can try them both out, see which works better for you. But this session today, I'll go through all the elements that are necessary for a complete model. One of the first things that you should do once you get started is actually go under the Help menu and check to make sure that you have the latest version. And you can click on Check for Updates. If there are updates necessary, it'll show you which one is the latest. And you would click Next and go through the process of uploading. As you can see, I need some updates on my version, so I would need to do that. Keep in mind, though, it can take 5 minutes, perhaps a little bit more sometimes, and so I'm not going to do that right now, but I will remember to do that a little bit later, because the utility rebate program always expects the results you submit to us to be in the most recent version of Energy Pro. So make sure you check for that before you submit it. If you're not sure you have the most recent version, that's the way to do it, is just have it go check for updates. So let's get started. We'll start at the top level of the building. The very top level of the building, in the first tab, is project design data. This is where you start labeling your building. You don't have to stick with what Energy Pro decided the name is. You can change it. And for every one of these levels, that's true. There's always a box that lets you relabel these things. And notice it pops up here on the building tree, the navigating tree. Whatever you put in here is what goes over here. This is just for your information. It doesn't affect how data is reported to us, so you can put in there whatever you want to make it easier for yourself to keep track of what's going on. If you're in a situation where all you can see is this, you can click on the little pluses and expand things, or under View, Expand Tree will pop everything out for you, so you don't have to click on every single one to expand all the levels. The building type is existing. You want, whenever you're asked a question of is it a part of the building or the whole building existing, new, an addition, and so on, always click on existing, with one exception that I'll explain later. Those other versions, basically you'll either do existing or new if it's something that is not going to be affected by the retrofit of the program. But you can always put existing and that'll be fine. Make sure you pick the right orientation for the house. This is the way the front door is facing. So in our case, let's say instead of north we want it to go south. Once we do that, it'll figure out the right compass direction for that. And then also make sure you get the right city. The library, once you click on select, the library has all the cities in California, actually many of the states, and even worldwide, but of course this is a California program, so you're going to find the city that is or is closest to the residence that is undergoing a retrofit. Once you've selected the one you want, that's fine. If you have a couple of choices, you pick the one that is really, it's hard to say exactly which one is closer to your house, probably, but I'll just let you know the acronyms that are here. AP stands for airport, and CO usually stands for county, like a county office. So it just happens to be wherever the weather station or temperature data is collected. So if you happen to know where those are in proximity to the house, you can pick the one that's more appropriate, but either should be fine. Now, what about all these other tabs? Well, project title, that's information about the house. So you can fill that in about the house right there. We don't require that you fill that in there, but it is a good way to keep track of the file in case you come back to it later and you're not sure exactly which house this is referring to. You can put in the information about the location. Designer, that is who in your company is filling out the information. Again, we don't require this, but it may be good record keeping for yourself in case you have more than one person building these models. It'll help you keep track of who's the originator of the data. The rest of these tabs, lighting designer, mechanical designer, utility, we don't, or outdoor, we don't require any of these to be filled in. Under the program, they're not relevant for what modeling we're trying to do. The utility tab can be filled in if you want with the electricity rates and the gas, natural gas or whatever fossil fuel for burning or for heating they're using. And you can indicate the heating source and so on. However, this is not required at all for the rebate program. This is only if you want to generate reports that show what the utility bill savings may be after all of these retrofits have been accomplished. That might be something you're interested in showing to your client, but we don't require it in the utility bill, in the Energy Upgrade California Utility Program. The HERS tab, though, you do want to address. This is where you can indicate some of the baseload information about the house, the appliances that they're using. If they have a second refrigerator, put in the approximate usage there. If you know they have one but you don't know what the rating is, you can just put in a similar value there, and note in the jobs reporting template that you know there's a unit there, you're not sure of the value, and you put that in the notes field in the jobs reporting template. Range, basically we're asking, is it gas or electric, have a pilot or not? A washer and dryer, where are they? The dryer type, is it electric or gas? Swimming pool, note that it's asking for how it's heated and whether there's a cover or not. But it is not asking for details about the pump. So this is just to enter in information about the existing or the existence of a swimming pool, whether it's a gas or electric heater. Unfortunately, Energy Pro is no place to take account of the type of pool pump or existence of a timer. It only is looking to see if there is a pool or a spa in existence in the home. For lighting, we ask that you add lighting to the model only if you're planning to replace it with a pin-based high-efficiency lighting. If you are going to recommend or provide screw-in lights, CFLs, or any other efficiency kind, unfortunately screw-in lighting is not part of the Energy Upgrade California utility rebate program. We certainly acknowledge there's energy savings to be had with such devices, but the program policy is that they want permanently installed fixtures only. So if it's a retrofit to install pin-based high-efficiency lighting, then you would go ahead and put in the lighting here if it's indoor, or here if it's outdoor. Put in the lighting that you are replacing here. So presumably you're replacing a incandescent bulb. You would hit the plus to add that or add others. You can indicate where it is, how many there are. Notice you don't need the wattage. The model is assuming a certain wattage for these. If you make a mistake and add too many, you can hit the red X. That'll take care of it. If, however, you are not planning to replace lighting, then Energy Pro will make an assumption based on essentially on the occupancy and other defaults of the house. And so you do not need to do input an inventory of the lighting here. This is only if you're planning to replace the lighting. And let me say at this time, the guidance that I'm offering here on what to enter and what not is specific to the Energy Upgrade California program. If you happen to have attended an Energy Pro training that is more general, or maybe for being a HERS 2 rater or for other purposes, they may emphasize different things need to be entered or asked to include certain things. Today I'm just focusing on the items that are important for the Energy Upgrade California program. When you're doing a direct hot water, that's the next layer down, you use the domestic hot water tab, which is here in the middle. You do not use the other tabs, just here. Even if you're doing hydronic heating, don't be tempted to click on that. The Energy Pro as a whole has a lot of tabs in here, many of which are relevant only for commercial jobs. And unfortunately, the model keeps them in there even if you're running a residential calculation. So that's why I am skipping over a lot of these tabs. Many of them don't even have any effect on the residential models. So we won't bother with them. We'll just focus on what we need. On the domestic hot water, make sure it's existing, and you click on the what they call existing boiler, which would pretty much just be the hot water heater. Once you click on that, it's going to open a library. It's called a library in Energy Pro. This is a very big window. Let me shrink it down a little bit. And in here it has some brand names as well as their size, their volume, and their heat input, energy efficiency. If you can find the kind of water heater that's in existence in the home when you go in and do your assessment, you can click on that. It'll change it to that. Chances are, though, you won't find the exact hot water heater that's already in place. And your two options at that point are you can either import from a larger database prepared by the California Energy Commission, where it's got gas water heaters or electric water heaters, and if you click on that, it'll have a even bigger library that you can look at, and that might even take a minute to open, and so you can kind of restrict the volume to shrink the list, but essentially it'll give you a much larger list by brand name and try to find the one that matches what you've got. However, suppose you don't find it there on that list. Well, then you still have the option of taking one of these standardized entries. So you can click on something that's standard, or there's also a default by model year. And you can click on one of those, and if that matches the values for the hot water heater that's there in the house, then that's fine. You can leave it as that. Currently, the program doesn't require that you identify the exact model and model number for what's in there. They just want to make sure the specifications are correct. If you find something that's close but not quite what you want, you can always click on the yellow plus. It'll copy whatever's highlighted right now and create a copy of it down at the bottom, and then you can edit that. You can type in new numbers. Maybe it's really a 40-gallon tank, so you would type in, be careful to type it in correctly, 40 gallons, there you go, and so on. Or maybe the energy factor isn't this standard, and you want to make it so you know it's something higher, you can put it in there. Whatever you put in here, though, does need to match on the jobs reporting template and vice versa. So that's part of what is checked when you submit the model and the Excel sheet, the jobs reporting template, to the program. They're making sure the model and the Excel sheet match. So make sure that whatever you do here is what you're doing on the jobs reporting template as well. So let's say that's OK. We'll click OK. It'll now put that in. We ask that this field be left as no pipe insulation. If you select something off that list, it's implying that you've insulated quite a lot of pipe in the house, and that's usually not the case. So these should not be selected unless you have actually observed all the kitchen pipes are insulated, or all pipes in the house have been insulated. And those are pretty extreme claims. If you do select it, though, if you have observed it in the house, you need to note it in the jobs reporting template as well. It needs to match here. If the reviewer sees that you've selected something here other than no pipe insulation, and it's mentioned nowhere in the jobs reporting template, they will question it. It'll raise a flag. So make sure those match as well. If the home has hydronic heating, the Energy Pro can accommodate that. There's a couple different kinds of hydronic heating systems that are existent. Some run off of the existing hot water heater, or some might have a dedicated water heating system separate from the domestic hot water. Because there's multiple ways that you can do that, I'm not going to run through all of those today, but I do encourage you to use the Help menu. And this is actually a way to look at not just hydronic heating, but anything. You can go to Contents under Help, and you can use this for looking up the various features of Energy Pro 2. Some entries are more helpful than others, but if you go to Index, you can look at a full list of all the things they have. You can type in a keyword. If you type in hydronic, you'll go right to hydronic systems, and in this case, it's actually got a thorough and complete, and at least in my opinion, a clear description of the way to model a hydronic system in Energy Pro. So I do encourage you to look for that if you do have a hydronic system in place. It'll walk you step by step through what needs to be done in terms of both the on the heating level as well as the hot water plant level. And this is the hot water plant level of the DHW. There is a renewables tab. And this tab can be used only if the house already has some sort of solar heating or solar PV. And I'll repeat that. If the existing house has solar heaters, hot water heating, or PV, then you can indicate that on this tab. However, the Energy Upgrade California program does not provide rebates for installation of solar photovoltaics or for solar hot water heating or solar heating for the house. That's covered under the CSI, the California Solar Initiatives. Okay. So let's go down to the next level. The next level is the heating and cooling systems for the house. The tabs that are of relevance here starts with the General tab, and also the Distribution, and we'll look through the rest of them as we need to. So we have this as an existing system type. We're going to click on here to open the library for our heating and cooling system. And again, you have a list of many different models and model numbers. You may or may not find what you're looking for. You can always click on Import, and that'll give you a larger list of the different kinds of equipment that you're wanting to model. So notice it goes all the way from gas furnace, air conditioner. You have heat pumps as well as room air conditioners and such. If you find something similar to, but not quite what you want, or you're not sure of the age of the system and that it's a very old unit, there are a couple of ways to get at a default value for a furnace. You might find a generic one in here, for example, it's just a furnace, let's say, or a furnace and air conditioner. If you find something that's close but not quite right, you can highlight the thing that's close, hit plus, it'll create a copy, and then now you can modify that. You can give it a new name even. I'm just going to say sample copy. Notice it changes up here. It would change it down here if this were wide enough. If you highlight it, you can see it's changed the name. And you can use that one to model the house you're looking for. Normally, if it is a unit with that is a part, you can have the split DX. If it's packaged together, you can put that. Notice there's a lot of different other options here depending on what kind of system it is. Make sure that's right. Make sure you got the heating type right. Is it gas or electric, or water, and so on? Is it central, or is it a wall or a floor or room? How does it work? You enter in the total output. This is just the BTUs coming out of the unit. I will let everyone know the Energy Pro model right now actually does not use the total output number to calculate energy savings. It is using the efficiency. We do ask that you put this in because if at a later time you're asked to, if you're referring back to it when we're reviewing the model, we just want to make sure that that information has been captured. But the efficiency you do want to make sure is in there correctly. Now over on the cooling tab, over here, this is where you would put the information about the cooling. If there's no air conditioner, if it's really just a heater, you can put in 0 for the output. That'll remove it from the system entirely. Otherwise, like with the heating, it doesn't necessarily care what the magnitude of the output is. It just needs to know that there is something there. But if you happen to know the tonnage, let's say it's 3 tons, put that in. Make sure you've got the efficiency in here for both the SEER and the EER. We want both of those to be in there. The other tabs, you don't need to click on those because they are not going to. Yeah, those are not going to affect the model. And notice that includes the notion of fans. The only situation where you might ever need to put in a fan for the house is if it's one that's on continuously, and that's actually, I believe, entered in another location. So, for example, Energy Pro does not model whole house fans that are at the on a switch for the homeowner to activate, or work intermittently, or bathroom fans. Those are not entered into the model. It's assumed there's the model has an assumed value for those. Only if there's a continuous fan draw would that be modeled in Energy Pro, and I'll get to that in a little bit later. So essentially the heating and cooling tabs are the tabs that you are going to look at for a residential model. Once you've entered your values, you hit OK. Comes over here. We don't worry about the others. We now move on to the distribution tab. Again, distribution type, it's existing. If it's a ducted, that goes here. If it's a ductless, if it's a wall unit, or if it's a mini split, doesn't have any ducts work, whatever the reason, you can select that from the menu here for both heating and cooling. And then the duct location. It's got some choices for that. Make sure you scroll up and down to take a look at all the options. Notice there's some options for conditioned space as well. If you have a situation where you're going to have covered ductwork, you can indicate that here, meaning it's in the attic and it's covered by insulation. You can select one of those here as well. Duct insulation on the ductwork, that goes in this box here. If you have a situation where you are have different levels of duct insulation, especially in an existing home, then you are asked to average it. So come up with the average value that it would apply to all of the ductwork. Previously, we had advised people to use the measured duct surface menu. We actually are no longer requesting that of contractors, and it is our recommendation that you just put in the average duct insulation value here. And if you are using this part of the model to model a post-retrofit home, and there might be a circumstance in which you would need to do it that way, then you can use the jobs reporting template. It has a table in it that indicates effective R values for deep buried ducts, and you can use that table to determine what the insulation value to put here for the ductwork. It's not the same as what the attic insulation level is, because the ductwork sticks up from the floor. It's not covered with as much as the floor of the attic, so you need to use a different R value. Make sure you click on this button right here so you can enter in the tested duct leakage level. And then go to the residential tab. Make sure this says setback. That's true for all jobs. Just as a standard for the program, it's presumed that there is some adjustment of the thermostat between winter and summer, and so that there is a usage of setback there. And then the HERS credits tab. This is the last tab on the HVAC level. On here, you're going to enter in the infiltration levels that you obtained through your blower door testing. You can do it. Your CFM 50 number goes here on the existing. So if you make sure this says airflow and existing, you put the number in here. If you are, and this may happen if you're using a HERS rating or rater to get the information, you may be getting specific leakage area. You can pick that, and then you would be able to enter in the SLA over here. So these boxes up here, these HVAC measured boxes, these can be selected within the Energy Upgrade California program if you have a record of a Title 24 HERS rating that generated a CF 4R and 6R. If you scan in those documents and provide them when you report the rest of the jobs reporting template and other required elements to the program, you are allowed to check these boxes as appropriate. If you, in order to understand the nature of each of these boxes, you can go to the help menu and it'll explain what each of those are representing. Those all relate to the air conditioning system, and in general, the air conditioning system being properly installed, at proper charge levels, and properly sized. So with that, I'm going to answer some of the HVAC-related questions that have been asked so far. So the first question I'm going to take is, do you have to input, on the distribution tab, do you have to input the duct leakage amount right here in this box where it says CFM 25 and CFM? This box is for reference, and so we ask that you for sure have that value recorded on the jobs reporting template. You can put it also here as a matter of reference. However, this box does not affect the model. So it really is a point of reference. If you leave the model at 0, it won't change the results, so we don't mind if it's a 0, but we do insist that you record it in the jobs reporting template in all cases. And this is the duct blaster test. The duct leakage is measured to the outside, and we are currently updating the jobs reporting template to provide more clarity, more clear instructions on what it is we're looking for in terms of how to measure the duct leakage. I know that there have been many questions have been coming in over the past few weeks on how to do that properly, and so rather than just say it verbally, I'm actually going to direct everybody to keep an eye out for the updated jobs reporting template and updated FAQ to have a more thorough explanation of how to calculate duct leakage. Essentially, though, you do need to be measuring the airflow out of the fan of the HVAC system. That's the total flow, and then your duct blaster reading is getting the fraction of that that's making it out to the end. So it's essentially the difference to the outside, and this is with the blower door reading. I know this isn't a very technical way to explain it, but as I mentioned, we'll have a more precise definition in the FAQ explaining how that is to be done. If you have, and we have another question relating to this topic, if you have ducts in both the attic and the crawl space, and there's only one pull down here, asking for where is it, you can, if it's predominantly one over the other, you can just put the one up here in this pull down menu. If it's half and half, you can go ahead and use the measure duct surface area menu. How that works is you check the box, and then this button shows up. It's taking my computer a little longer than I expected, but you can click on that button, and then you can actually indicate which fraction of the ducts, what length of run is in the attic versus what length of run is in the basement or the crawl space. You would indicate each level of installation here. So if the situation calls for it's a very different places for the runs, you can put it out here. You can lay out the different runs here. What we didn't want to do is insist everybody do this, because there's apt to be different diameters as you go through the whole network, and Energy Pro only allows 5 runs to be here. So if you are breaking out the parts of your duct system, do what you can to group things together. Energy Pro is more concerned about, as you can see, diameter and length and insulation levels, and it's not so much concerned about proximity, say, to the air conditioner, how far away it is. It's making some average assumptions about that. So you can generalize this to the nature of the ductwork in the attic versus the basement, say. And this part down here, you do not need to worry about that. It does not affect the model. This section down here about attic insulation. That's not where you would indicate insulation covering ducts. You have to work it into the R value of the insulation using the table in the jobs reporting template. When you're done, click OK. Does the Energy Pro checklist on the JRT list every required field for Energy Pro? And that's referring back to, I'm just going to bring it up briefly. It's in the JRT. There was this Energy Pro layout page, Energy Pro checklist. This is all the required elements, yes, and it's got some length to it. So you go on down. This is all of the relevant fields here. All of the relevant fields, I should say, that are in the JRT. I will say that this is not something that you should do blindly. We still expect that you are creating a realistic model. So if there's something that seems to be missing, in other words, where you're having to pick items off of the library menu, that level of detail isn't necessarily in here. You're going to have to make sure that everything's entered in the right place in the model. But this is a guide to make sure that you know what are the critical elements to the model to have it be as complete as possible. You'll still have to enter in the scope of work and figure out how to do that. But this is going to help you in the sense that over here we've indicated where in Energy Pro model it's located, and here's the value you entered on the other sheet, etc. Also, when we get down to the proposed scope, notice all I did is just show you the values for things after the job, but you will have to make sure you're picking the things as appropriate off of the list. Same with the post-retrofit section. If you have a gravity furnace, a question about gravity furnaces in the crawl space, what does one pick off of this list in terms of a type of system that you have? That would be something you find here under the, remember, I just picked the library for the heating system. So heating type, it's a gas furnace. If it's gravity wall, that's one thing. If it's floor, a floor furnace presumably is, I assume we're not talking about a boiler system, that we're talking about maybe the vents in the floor, but it's a gravity. If the gravity furnace is somewhere else in the house, that's a good question, I'm assuming if it's a floor furnace, it's a floor furnace, but this is probably one that runs along the baseboard. I'm guessing it's close to the floor if you're picking this. For more clarity, there's always two options. If you have a few options, if you aren't sure how to model something, you can go to the Help menu in Energy Pro. You can write to Energy Pro support, so support@energysoft.com. And you also can write to the program at contractors@thecvpca.org to ask questions of how to model something, or is something eligible for the program, those kinds of questions. Oh, before I close this, by the way, notice that I didn't say anything about entering the sensible heat, the sensible load from the air conditioning system. Again, Energy Pro, for the purpose of energy savings, is not sensitive to the output levels for the sensible versus latent cooling loads on the air conditioner. It is only sensitive to the SEER and EER values for the purpose of the energy savings calculation. If you are, of course, if you're doing any right sizing calculations, loads calculations using Energy Pro, and it does have that ability if you purchase the loads module, then it would care about what those values are, the output and the sensible. But for the purpose of just running an Energy Pro model for energy savings calculations, it isn't required that you fill in those numbers, as long as they're just, you make sure there's something there besides zero. That. I'm going to jump down one more level. Keep typing in those questions. I know we've got a lot of them, so I'm trying to get through the first pass at the model, and then we'll hit up these questions at the end. So let me finish up, and then we'll go into our questions that have been posed. On the zone level, you can indicate the floor number, but everything else, all these tabs, all these other fields, they actually are not relevant to the model. So you do not need to change any of those as they started off. I mean, it is a conditioned space, of course, but beyond that, there's none. These are actually not even going to affect a residential model, so you don't need to spend any time filling those in. So this is considered, though, the zone is served by this air conditioning system. And then down here, even though it's labeled Zone 1, and that's the name you'll get if you run the wizard, it's actually the room level, so I'm going to call it Room 1. And again, you can change these to match your preferences. So with respect to how Energy Pro works, it is concerned with heat transfer to and from the outside. So it's considered about the outside walls of the house, but not the internal walls of the house. It makes an approximation of every room having the same temperature. So there's no point in trying to model internal walls, for example. And so to simplify your life, we do allow you to model the house as one room, assuming we have a one-story house. If you have a two-story house, you can create two zones of first and second story, and then you have a room for each of those floors. And then the area is the floor area, measured from the inside, ceiling height, making sure it's existing, and then the year built. We ask that you leave the temperatures alone. We expect to see it at 66 and 78. That's just a program standard. So I do leave those alone. Skip the infiltration tab. That's not relevant for the residential module. But the occupant tab, you do need to make sure you've got the number of kitchens and bedrooms correct. Energy Pro makes an assumption over how many appliances and lighting and such, which are all defaulted, but it depends on how many kitchens and bedrooms you have. So make sure those are accurate for the room, or rather the floor of the house. And the rest of these we will leave alone. I'm going to check right here, including the exhaust fan here. Okay. Below the room, you're going to put the exterior walls, and then as well as the floor and the roof. Generally, what we ask is, because of the way that Energy Pro works, if your house is irregularly shaped, All we ask for you is to give us what's called the projection, or just the area of the front of the house as if you're looking at it straight on. And that's simply the width of the house times the height of the floor. So in this case, we've said we have 8 foot, and this is from the inside. So in the sense of looking, it's the front of the house. We want an 8 foot tall ceiling times the width of the front of the house. And that's how you get your area here. It's as if, and it's the question was, does this apply if your house has rounded corners or turrets or something like that? Essentially, just think of it as if you were standing out in front of the house at the curb, and you measured how wide is the house, then times 8 feet. Make sure it's existing, and then here it's another library. You're going to be picking out the insulation and the framing type for the walls and materials. If you are not sure of the construction, you can use a default wall based on the age of the home. And that's basically what goes into here. You'll pick that. Okay. And make sure that you've got the proper orientation for that side of the house. The model does take into effect the sunlight hitting it, so it does matter where which side of the house this wall is facing. And we don't add in anything about the thermal mass. Then to accommodate the parts of the house that are facing unconditioned space, so that includes the floor, the ceiling or the roof, as well as any knee walls or walls that are adjacent to a garage, for example. There's a couple things that you can do. When you come up to the room level, if you need to add something, you click there and you pick what it is we're talking about. In general, for knee walls or walls against the garage, you can add an exterior wall. And come down here, make it existing. I'm going to pick the wall, whatever insulation level, let's just say it's that pre-98 wall. And let's see, oops, wait, I think it's, no, that's not where it is. Make sure you enter in an area for it, so you'll need to know something about it. You need to know the area. I'm trying to remember, there is a place where you can indicate the solar reflectance. If it's an interior wall, then what you are going to say about it is that it has a solar reflectance of 1. What that means is no sunlight or no sun heat is coming through that wall. It's a knee wall. It's going into your attic. The sun isn't hitting it directly. So that part of that wall is not subject to heat coming in from direct sunlight. And so that's how you would enter in that bit of for a knee wall. And to help you, make sure you do, if you want to keep track of all your walls, of course, give them a name so that you can see what's going on. And also this helps the reviewer understand what you meant by putting in an extra wall that doesn't have a front, left, right, rear designation. So you can say knee wall adjacent to attic, for example. There you go. Now you can have raised floors or slabs, and so if it's a raised floor, this is what it'll look like. Make sure you get the area correct, and you can pick it from a library. Same with slabs. If you're adding a slab on grade, same story. And then the roof, when you click that, again, make sure you get the area correct. And this is the projected area. So in a sense, it's the area of the ceiling that you're putting in at this level. And your choices will be either you have an A-frame kind of house, which is an attic, or if it's there is no attic space, if it's a cathedral ceiling, meaning that the conditioned space goes right up to the rafters and then it's sealed off. Maybe you have a vaulted ceiling in a living room or something similar. Then you pick cathedral, making sure you're getting the right insulation level. And if you have a house that is a little bit both, then you can add a second roof. Essentially, one will be type 1, so this is an attic. We can say, okay, this part of the house has a cathedral ceiling that's, we have to decide what the R value is. Let's just say it's, we think it's that kind of R11, so we'll do that. And then we have to specify what part of the floor area does that cover? And remember, this is essentially what part of the house does it cover? So maybe it's only in the living room, so maybe it's only 120 square feet. Make sure that's also existing. Now notice what happened. It just changed back to R0 because I changed the type. So pay attention. It actually moves where the box is. So if you do change that, make sure you've picked the right thing in the library before you move away from it. There, now it's staying. And notice I put in a little note so I knew which of these is which. Now that I'm done with making my model, we'll quickly run the calculations and then I'll start talking about questions. To get the calculations to run properly, you can check to make sure you've got the right things checked. Under the Calculations tab on the left, look at the module you've purchased. In this case, we're talking about Res Performance. These are the things you want checked. You want to, you can delete temporary files after simulation is complete. That's fine. Either of these is fine, really. This extra output file, so that's just gives you the kind of the raw data from the module. You don't need it for reporting. You do, however, need to have the run the measures combined together. That's critical. That needs to be done every time because that will make sure that you are looking at the interactive effects of all the measures that you have in your scope of work. Once you've checked that, then click on the Alternatives tab. And this is where you can indicate your scope of work. You check off the item that you want to include in your improvements, and then you can adjust the library element for that if you like. Do not enter in the costs. You don't need to report the individual costs to the program. We want the total cost of the job reported in the jobs reporting template, but you don't have to put it here in the model. And historically, that actually changes the order in which things are shown, and we really don't want the results to be affected by what you've got over here in the cost. So check over here for duct leakage. We're looking for the % duct leakage. Again, you can enter in a CFM25 for your target or what you achieved, but the model will only look at the actual duct leakage target that you've entered, building leakage, etc. So my scope of work is saying I'm going to replace the roofing with R38, and my duct leakage is going to go down to 6%. My building leakage is going to go down to 1,200. Now, what this is going to do when I run my calculations is that every element of the house that has a roof, or the part of the house that has duct leakage and the part that has building leakage, will be fixed to these levels. But notice that I'm talking about the attic. I want to make sure it's only the attic and not the cathedral ceiling. So this is where our type comes into play. The things that are going to be improved upon work only if it says existing for that item. So all the roofs that are existing will be fixed, will be upgraded when I run the calculations. If there's some part of the house I do not want to upgrade, but that it is on the list of on my scope of work, I can change that piece to new. As soon as I say new, and make sure you've got the right assembly there, then when I run the calculations, if attics are being improved, this attic will not, just the other one. In other words, just this roof over here, which is existing, will have new insulation applied to it. So again, if I'm, for example, putting a new insulation into all my roofs elements of the model, any of them that say existing will have the new insulation put on them. Any that say they're new will not be touched. And so we're going to do the calculations with that. To run the calculations, you hit calculate. It'll take a few minutes, maybe a few minutes, hopefully not. It should take seconds to run the calculation. The progress meter is down here on the lower left. It'll tell you what step it's on. Right now it's doing the simulations. If you have more elements in the model, it'll take longer to run because it looks at each one of them in turn. But it's looking at the interactive effects, which means that it's the effect of doing them together. Because as soon as you, for example, insulate the roof, now the air conditioner doesn't need to run as much because the house is going to stay cooler longer or stay warmer in the winter longer. And so you're going to be affecting the effectiveness of all these other measures in turn. Simulation is complete. You can see some of the results are down here. These are all in, if you're using the Res Performance module, kilobTUs per square foot per year, which is probably a unit nobody can relate to just in of itself, but you can see how things either drop or continue. But the important thing to note is that over here we have a savings value, and this is going to relate to the savings value that we've indicated for relate to the rebate. If you see something unusual showing up, like a negative savings, which is a terrible thing to have when you've done all these great work on your house, take a look and see what happened in terms of your entries. Maybe there's something that was entered in incorrectly. We look up here, and the duct leakage column, it went to 0. So for some reason I didn't properly make it go to 6 the way that I wanted. So let's compare also to make sure that the duct leakage was appropriately entered in up above. Duct leakage is under the HVAC system. Here it's 28, so that should be fine. So we'll make sure there's nothing else that's going on that might affect it. All right, so let's put that. Let's try it again. And while that's running, I'll point out one more thing. Notice up here you have a file name for the file. That little asterisk will show up when a change has been made to the file and you haven't yet saved. So what I'm going to do is, as soon as this is done, I'm actually going to save the file. And that way we can always refer back to it. If you do find that you're having trouble with a model like this, always contact the Energy Soft support, so you can send an email. And if you do contact them, send them a copy of the file that you're working with. And the same goes if you are contacting our program as well. If you have ever encounter a problem, it is much more helpful for us if you can provide a copy of the model and even the jobs reporting template along with explanation of what's going on. It makes it much easier for us to troubleshoot. If you just do it in words, it's really hard for us to tell what might be causing the trouble. So just to let you know what's going on here, I turned off the measured duct surface area menu. That seems to have fixed the problem. So just remember, if you use it, if you have to use it, make sure you put in the proper lengths. I think one of my lengths was 0, and that was an unusual entry, and I think it messed up the numbers here. So when I turn that off, it's now calculating as expected. And these boxes, it went back to 0, and I know that it doesn't affect anything anyway, according to Energy Soft. So as you saw, just kind of troubleshooting a little bit got me out of that problem. Now back to the question of what if you have two different kinds of roofs. In the case that I've got a cathedral ceiling and an attic, and I want to retrofit both of them, but to do different insulation levels. I want the attic to be R38. I want the cathedral to be, say, R23. Let's look at how you would do that. Clearly, there's no second place to put in that other attic. And this is relevant, too, if you're doing, say, installing a different type of ductwork system, going from a wall unit to central air. There's no place to put in ducting, new type of ducting here. There's no place to put in a new hydronic system formally here, although you might be able to change it under domestic hot water. But rather than go through ways to try and kind of jury-rig the model to do what you want, you can, instead of using the Alternatives tab, you are allowed to, once you've built the model for the existing home, come up to File, Save As, and then when you save it, I'm just going to help myself here. That was the existing model. Now we're going to create the post-retrofit version. Essentially, I'm saving a copy of what I just did a second ago. Okay. Now keep in mind I hadn't saved anything yet until then, so this is now the only copy of all these changes I made. So yeah, it may be better to instruct you to say save what you had and then save as to create the copy. So now I've got a second model, the post-retrofit version. The post-retrofit version now, in the main part of the model, I can put in the new ductwork. I can put in the improvements to the installation directly into the main model. All right, so if I do it that way, then I have a before model and an after model. You run the reports to get the energy savings out of them, and then you put those values into the jobs reporting template, and it'll show you what the difference is between them. It'll show you the savings. How do we get those reports? Well, make sure you've checked off the right module. So I'm going to turn off that one and turn that one on. Expand it. And what you really need is the Econ 2. The other stuff's nice to have if you want to show it to a homeowner, but in general, that's what you really need is the Econ 2. You can hit Report Wizard or Print Preview. It's the Wizard it takes you step by step through the process of picking the right reports. If you've already got it checked off here on the reports sidebar, you've got all the reports you want, just hit Print Preview and it'll come right up with a PDF version of the reports. And so it is, and it has the information that you entered on that top level, the project, who designed it and such. So that's another advantage to entering that in case you're showing this to a homeowner. I'm going to scroll down to the last page, which is the Econ 2 report. And let me zoom in so it's not so tiny. Zoom in, there we go. As you can see on this sheet, we have the scope of work that we were talking about listed here. It shows you the savings, cumulative savings, both in TDV values, which is relevant for SMUD contractors, and site savings, which is relevant for the PG&E contractors. Site savings, that's what the utility rebate is based on in the PG&E territory. And so that's the percent, but the numbers you need to put into the GRT are at the bottom. And so notice we have a place for the electricity, the therms from the fossil fuel. Down here we have average demand, KW, and if you do have to report TDV for SMUD, that's down here as well. These numbers go into the GRT. This is the pre-retrofit house, the post-retrofit house, and so on. So this is what information you need to put into the GRT. It also the GRT will automatically calculate what savings you get. If you had to create two models, you create an Econ 2 for each, and then it'll just give you one column of numbers, and you put that into the appropriate place on the jobs reporting template. So that takes us through the whole process of kind of fixing up your model to match what you want it to be for the house you have, running the calculations after you've chosen your scope of work, and then running the reports that you need for reporting back to the utility rebate program. So what I'd like to do is encourage you, if you have questions you haven't yet asked, to type those in. We're going to use the rest of the time to go over the questions that have been answered as best we can. There's quite a few of them, so I'm going to go through them, and we're going to try and ask the most popular ones that have come up so far. So we had one question about, okay, could we hear a little bit more about how to do the buried ducts modeling? Absolutely. This is one area where you will need to reference the JRT. Let's say that we've got a system that's currently in place, doesn't have deep buried ducts, its ductwork is just sitting on the ceiling itself is insulated, but the ductwork's not covered in any loose fill insulation. So we've reported what the existing condition of the house is. What you can do to figure out how to model the deep buried duct condition is, let's go to the JRT, and I'll show you where to look for those tabs. We're going to go to the post-retrofit tab, the advanced post-retrofit tab, and scroll down to the bottom. So below all the fields where you're entering in information, you'll see that there's some tables here. There's the vintage tables for things that you can't measure. But there we go, buried duct effective R values. And let me make this a little bit bigger so You can see, and this is in everybody's jobs reporting template. So along the left column, it's the attic insulation that's been put in. So this is what you've essentially measured on from the floor of the attic. And so whether it's R30 all the way up to R60, you've got a value here that you can look up. If it's blown fiberglass, that's this area here. If it's blown cellulose, it's right here. You need to come up with the average duct diameter, and that's what these numbers are here at the top. Notice it's 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and so on. I'm going to scoot up just a little bit more so you can see better. There we go. 4 inches through 16-inch diameter ducts. What's the average duct diameter? And then you find it on the table with, let's say you're putting in R38. You come on down here and it's blown fiberglass. That means you have an effective R value of R13 on the deep buried ducts. Or if it was blown cellulose and it was an 8-inch diameter duct, a big duct, and it's R38 blown cellulose, then it's an R value of 4.2. You remember that number because then when you come back to Energy Pro and you've said, okay, I now have deep buried ducts in my duct system. Now my duct insulation is, let's say it was the blown fiberglass, that's 13. So we're going to put that in for that's the new duct insulation level. And Energy Pro will treat that the way that you intend it to, which is it'll use that R value as the duct insulation value. Just do not worry that there's no pull-down menu here to specify it's deep buried. All it really needs to know is what is the effective R value from that table. So we have a question about what if we have two HVAC systems? What if 2 zones with 2 systems? What you will need to do is you need to add an HVAC system. And you can see how it's laid out currently. There's one system that has all the elements of the house, the walls and the ceiling and the roof and the floor, all within the zone. Basically, you're going to have to add another air conditioner, or rather HVAC system. So you go up to the level above it, and you're going to right-click on it and add a system. So how did I do that again? I was pointing at it. I right-click on it, and it says Add System. And so when it adds a system, boom, it puts it down here. Now, right now, the way the model is set up, this system serves nothing. There's no element to the house for it to serve. So you have to start adding, you have to add a zone, and you have to add a room for it to actually do anything. On top of that, well, which parts of this room, which could be, say, a floor of the house, that's probably the most common situation, or maybe it's a really large ranch-style house, kind of an east and west wing, let's say. But however it is, you need to make sure that the room has all of the external walls associated with it in the right place. So let's say this is the first floor. So this really is not zone 1, but floor 1. And this is floor 2. Okay, and we'll change that floor number to 2. Okay. So now we've got our room. Make sure now that you've added it, when you add it, you'll note there's probably a lot of numbers that are different. The area, it starts off as 0, so you have to make sure you put in the right value for your second floor story of your house. Maybe it's a little bit smaller. We'll just say it's 900. So make sure it's existing. Notice the year isn't necessarily what it was in the other model. Make sure these numbers match what you have going on in the other room. It's 66 and 78, so we make that 66 and 78. And we got the occupant. There's probably not a kitchen upstairs, so make sure you change that as appropriate. So your bedrooms are 3. Same thing with the floor on the downstairs. Are there really 3 bedrooms downstairs? No, we're going to make sure that's, or maybe there's a den. And then you put in the walls. So you would add walls, you would add windows, and so on. And I didn't mention this earlier, but it works similar to the walls. When you add windows, you just make sure you put in the area, pick from the library, and so forth. Now, one thing I didn't mention, I will mention now, with respect to the windows, make sure that, first they're manufactured, not site-built, but also sometimes it's really a door. If you've got a patio door, that's really just one big window. It works like a window anyway. It's a lot of glass. So you add it as a window, and then you can change the type to a door, and you can say how many panes there are and so on. But you can pick the glass type from the library over off to the side. Cancel that. So that's how to add our second zone. And once you've put all that in, make sure also you pay attention to the distribution type for that system, of that second system. Make sure all that's right, and you've tested it separately. So make sure you've got the the distribution and the leakage done correctly and so on for that system as well. So we have a question about what if there's ductwork with asbestos. So if you have asbestos in the home, and oftentimes it's on the ductwork, but it could also be in other parts, but I'll talk about the ductwork first. Per code, per BPI standards, you do not run a duct blaster test on ducts with asbestos. You do nothing, in general, you do nothing to disturb the asbestos that you might find in the home. If you have a job where you're going to leave the dust, whatever the asbestos is there in place, then if it's, say, on the ductwork and you don't do anything about it, then you, at no point do you test the ductwork. You will need to just use the values on the vintage tables, the Title 24 vintage tables. That's on the JRT. I'm going to come back and here's a buried duct list. Right above it, vintage tables. And you can find the, on here there is a leakage, so building leakage, duct leakage factor. This is actually how much goes through one of the runs. So it's 86% makes it through, 14% does not, and it's by year. So if this is a duct leakage factor of 14% for supply or return, we want supply plus return, so you double that number. So 2 times 14 is 28, and that was the number we were using earlier. And 28% is the default for all houses all the way up to until you get to 2001, and that switches to 22. Now, what if you have that and you want to estimate an insulation value because it's got something there? Maybe it's a asbestos-wrapped ductwork. The default is, I believe, on here. Let me double check because I can. If it's on here, that would be easier than me just telling you. Oh, there it is, 2.1. If you don't know what it is, it's 2.1. So if that's the situation, use the vintage tables. And in any circumstance where you cannot determine the value for one of these parameters, you're allowed to use the vintage tables, but you must always, in any case you use the vintage tables, you must always say so in the notes section of the JRT, that you used vintage tables for whatever it is. That is so the reviewers know where that number came from in case elsewhere it was found you didn't actually observe the number directly. We did have a question about how does the partition, say, between a garage and an interior room, a conditioned space, how does that work? It's similar like a knee wall. The distinction that there is to be made in Energy Pro is if the wall is adjacent to, let's say, the garage or to the attic, like in the case of a knee wall, really what Energy Pro wants to know is what's the assembly of the wall, and you need to tell Energy Pro that that particular part of the wall is an exterior wall of the house, but it doesn't, no sunlight hits it, and that's the big difference that Energy Pro wants to know about. So again, if you set up your knee wall, then within the library, the solar reflectance is 1. That means it's a perfect reflector of sunlight, meaning that no sunlight, or rather no heat from the sun, can get through that wall. That may seem a little strange because you're talking about the garage. Of course, there's no sunlight at all to bounce off, but the model treats it the same way as if it were completely shaded. So instead of saying it's adjacent to a garage, Energy Pro doesn't really have a way to do that. We just say it acts like no sunlight can pass through it, no heat from the sun can pass through it. Okay. We had a couple folks say, could we go through the, on the HVAC system, can we go through the HERS credit tab again? certainly. Let's just look at that a little bit more. Notice that this is where you are indicating the leakage in the building envelope. As part of the Energy Upgrade California program, when you do an assessment on an advanced job, you are required to do a blower door test on the house to get infiltration values. And so that is what you're entering here, the CFM50 from that reading. And that's where you would put this here. If a HERS 2 rating, HERS 2 rater is performing the work, they can enter it this way, or they can enter the specific leakage area. That's fine too. You just pull this pull-down menu lets you select specific leakage area instead. You can put that number in as well. If a home performance contractor, those doing the work, they'll be just taking the CFM50 from their blower door readings. If you have a Title 24 HERS rater come and inspect the installation of an air conditioner unit, which is required in all the inland climate zones 2 and 9 through 16, whenever an air conditioner by code is installed, you're expected to have that looked at, is my understanding. So, but in any case that you have a Title 24 HERS rater looking at your air conditioning system, they will be verifying one or more of these elements on the job. And so you can take credit for that, meaning that you can check these boxes as appropriate for what they checked. If you can also include the documentation from that inspection with your submission of the JRT and the Energy Pro model and other reporting requirements to the program. Essentially, we're asking you to take a scanned copy, a PDF copy of the or however you can get an electronic copy of it, get that submitted into the vision system, the reporting system, and we'll take a look at the CF4R, CF6R documents as justification for checking these boxes. In general, being able to claim that will save an extra 1 to 3% on the if there's cooling, of course, in the house. Keep in mind that this is typically what you would be doing after you've installed the air conditioning equipment. So in order to check these boxes, you have to be doing using the two-model approach. In other words, the post-retrofit model is the one in which you would check all these boxes. Now, if you had a HERS rater, a Title 24 HERS rater, for some reason looking at the existing equipment, then you could check it there as well. But it will improve the performance of the system before you've done any work on it. So we don't expect that that's the situation most contractors find themselves in. Okay, so also I think there was a question about the AHU. This is what you check in order to enter in the duct leakage percentage. This is duct leakage to the outside. This is the value that you obtain through a duct blaster test. That's also required of all the advanced projects. So we will provide detailed instructions in what needs to be recorded and done to do a proper duct blaster test and properly report this value. We'll do that in writing. We'll send out basically as part of the FAQ when we notify everyone that the webinar has been posted and the FAQ is ready. Look for it in there, and that's how you get to that number.